Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the September 10th Lawrence City Commission meeting, and I'll go ahead and get us started off with our first item, which is our executive session.
I move to recess into executive session for approximately 30 minutes to discuss employer-employee negotiations pursuant to the employer-employee negotiations exception as set forth in KSA 75-4319B3. The justification for the executive session is to keep employer-employee negotiation matters confidential at this time. The City Commission will resume its regular meeting in the City Commission room at 5:31 p.m. after the executive session is concluded.
All right. I have a first. Is there a second?
Second that motion.
All right. I have a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that's 4 for, none against. All right.
4 or 5.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry, 5 for. I'm sorry. 5 for the affirmative.
about that.
I didn't quite hear Commissioner Larson. We have returned from executive session and have nothing to report. We will go ahead and see everybody at 5:45. Thank you. All right. All right, good evening again, and welcome to the September 10th, 2024 Lawrence City Commission meeting. And now Sherry will go into the rundown of the meeting.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, everyone. Please silence your cell phones to minimize distractions during the meeting. When the mayor calls for public comment, please approach the podium to indicate you wish to speak. Virtual participants should use the raise hand function to indicate they wish to speak. When prompted, select Join as Panelist. There will be a brief delay as your role changes. Once your name is called, please unmute and turn on your camera to provide your comments. Please state your name and zip code before speaking. The city reserves the right to turn videos off or mute participants, and all comments will be limited to 3 minutes. The primary format for accessing or participating in this meeting is in person at City Hall. Virtual access to view or participate in the meeting cannot be guaranteed. The chat function will not be monitored. If you have any trouble, the meeting can be viewed on the city's YouTube channel and cable channel 25. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Sherry. All right, to go ahead and get us started off, item B, approve the agenda. The City Commission reserves the right to amend, supplement, or reorder the agenda during the meeting.
Move to approve the agenda?
Second.
I have a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Approved 5-0. Item C, consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered under one motion and approved by one motion. Members of the governing body may remove items for separate discussion if desired. Members of the public may remove items identified as quasi-judicial for separate discussion if desired. Members of the public will be limited to 3 minutes for comments. Would any of the commission like to remove any items?
No, sir, not for me.
Not seeing any, and there are no quasi-judicial items, so I would entertain a motion.
Move for approval of the consent agenda?
Second.
I have a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Approved 5-0. Going to item E, regular agenda items. Receive the presentation on the City Hall reconfiguration project. Project CM1-0001.
Municipal Services and Operation. The presentation today is regarding City Hall reconfiguration project CM1-0001. The purpose of this project is presentation is to provide project updates and next steps. Okay, yeah, I need to share. Thank you. To provide project updates and next steps. The agenda of this presentation is to provide some project overview, talk a little bit about the overall scope of work for this project, and we have Multi-Studio here to provide the current updates and talk about next steps for this project. A little bit of project overview. The City Hall building, this building was built back in 1980. It's currently supporting over 120 employees from different departments. Over the years, there were multiple minor renovations to this building due to departments moving in and moving out from this building. Over the past 45 years, the city has doubled in size in terms of population, and also there was a response to that in our workforce, in addition to a lot of changes and which required a lot of space needs and analysis. In 2019, there was an assessment performed to understand our needs and workspace needs in terms of current and future, and to examine some of the challenges we're facing with this building and look at the future expansion for it. The current approved budget for this project under the capital improvement plan is $12 million for all professional and construction services. In March 2023, request for proposal was posted by the city looking for architecture and engineering services for this project. We were trying to seek national reputable firms that understand the scope of work. They have a lot of experience to do such work. In October 2023, the city executed a professional service agreement with Multi-Studio, one of the national leaders in this field, and also they are local. They have a lot of local experience here with the city of Lawrence, and they have been awarded the first phase of this project. Overall, the project scope could be divided into 3 phases. Phase 1 is the pre-design and schematic design, also test fit and understanding the needs for the city. Phase 2 is more detailed design. They will look into more detailed design, provide construction documents and bidding services, and phase 3 is construction. First phase, 2 phases are basically will be done by Multi-Studio. And I will turn it to Multi-Studio. We have Gwen and Katie here. They will walk us through the current steps and the next steps too.
Thanks, Omar. I'm Gwen Gigas with Multi-Studio. Some of you may be more familiar with Gould Evans. That was a former version of our firm. We recently rebranded a few years ago. Gould Evans started 50 years ago here in Lawrence, so we have a long history here in Lawrence, but over that 50 years, we've grown to have 5 offices across the country. I personally have experience working with clients like yourselves, a lot of county and municipal government work in my recent past, so experience working on projects very similar to this. I'll let Katie introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Katie Pullman. I'm an associate principal at Multi-Studio. I'm our workplace market sector leader with over a decade of experience in helping clients, workplace clients, understand their current and future workplace needs and really understanding how we can deliver space that supports the needs of employees and who they serve. And so when we started this project, our first scope was to really understand the existing City Hall, the challenges with City Hall, but also the needs of the current workforce and thinking into the future. We want to have projects that have sustainability and have longevity across time so that you are able to flex and grow and change within your space versus having to do large projects often because they are time intensive, cost intensive, and a headache to everybody. So one of the things that we identified first was actually some of the constraints that we have with the chamber space that we're in now. We know that you all want to welcome the city and the community to engage in things like this, and the space just doesn't support or facilitate having that due to size, due to layout. We know there are concerns about safety and security for everyone involved. That the acoustics could be improved, and that there are accessibility challenges even getting to this space. In addition to not having space for the community to engage with city staff, there's also not adequate space for the staff that's here. So rule of thumb in workplace in the Midwest is that we're seeing about 220 square feet, give or take, per person to have a workplace that really supports the needs of the employees. And even if we were to renovate this space, there's a limit in square footage. We can't move out, we can't move up. So that's really hindering the ability to support the employees and the city staff as necessary. In addition, because of the layout of the building, it's creating silos between floors and between departments. That's also not allowing city staff to collaborate and really come up with some innovative opportunities for the city. And in addition to that, there are departments that are not even housed in this building, creating more silo departments. As Omar mentioned in the brief overview, we are at the beginning. What we're doing now is collecting information, understanding challenges, understanding needs. We are in the pre-design phase. Moving forward, we would engage in schematic design that involves digging deeper into department needs, community needs. It is part of the plan to have further community engagement as the process continues. After schematic design would be design development, construction documents, And then, as Omar said, construction in Phase 3. As we were gathering information, it was important that we heard all the voices of city staff. So we engaged in surveys and meetings with departments to really understand what the employee needs and wants were for their space, which was really about embracing diverse work styles. We know that work has changed not only since this building was built, but since COVID, and a lot has changed in workplace since COVID. There was a strong emphasis and desire to promote wellness and enhance the employee experience. And again, some of the things that I mentioned earlier, spaces for collaboration, but also spaces for focus and to get work done and have confidential conversations. One of the things that is also lacking in this current space is meeting space of different sizes, different types to really engage. In addition to the survey, we went through a visioning process, understanding the goals of the city staff and imagining what a future city hall could look like and what it could provide for the city. And you can see in this word cloud some of the words that were mentioned again and again about being collaborative, progressive, flexible, accessible, and inspiring. As I mentioned, we don't think about just what the needs are today, but taking a long-term approach. And so we looked at departments sizes today and then looking 10 years out to make sure that we have space to grow. The other thing that we considered was remote staff and hybrid staff and bringing departments that are not currently in City Hall in this building today as part of the new City Hall. So in addition to staff space, we knew that it was important, again, to address community space as well. So in addition to the square footage that staff needs to do their job, there's also the need for the commission room that we're in, but also community and meeting space to really meet the community, invite the community into here. So with all of that, we arrived at a square footage need for the new City Hall. And I'll let Gwen take it from there.
So as Omar mentioned, this building opened in 1980, and a lot's changed since then. The population of the city has nearly doubled. The land area the city takes up has doubled a lot as well. And as Katie was talking about, there has been a lot of change in how we work. I mean, if you think back 1980, there was no internet, there was no email, people didn't have computers at their desks. So there have been significant changes in what the needs are in places to work and in commission rooms like this. There's been, some minor adjustments made here and there to fit in AV and things like that, but the space was, as you can tell, not designed for it. There's cords across the floor, there's acoustic issues because it was not designed for what our current needs and what we expect out of spaces like this. Other challenges that we saw as we reviewed City Hall and talked with staff and talked with commissioners and talked with others, there's not the square footage to support the current needs here. There's spaces like the executive session room that actually doubles as workspaces for staff as well. Well, it's great to have spaces that are used for multiple things. That's really not a piece that we want to overlap, is people that are trying to work and then they have to leave at a certain time because of commission meetings, other things like that. As you can see from some of the pictures, there's stairwells used as storage spaces. There's just not good space to support how the city functions today. Another thing is just access to the building itself. It's the parking, there's no close parking. It's hard from an ADA standpoint to get to the building. There's no place, even if, say, you have someone that's on crutches or something and you can't even necessarily drop them off at a nearby entrance very easily. So there's just a lot of challenges from an accessibility standpoint. And also the building itself was built prior to the ADA coming into effect. So restrooms, other areas weren't designed for that. There's been modifications made as best as can be done, but ultimately there would have to be much more significant modifications made to truly meet those requirements. Also with the 5 stories, it really creates some very disconnected floor plans. It doesn't allow departments to work together very easily. They're not very interconnected. It creates kind of those silos because they're within their different departments. It also creates challenges of creating efficient space for different departments. They are, there's a couple floors where it's like there may be some excess space, and there's other floors that everyone's crammed in, but it's hard to connect those spaces between floors for different departments and really take advantage of that space. There's also just there's several upgrades and maintenance repairs that would need to be done. Not to say these can't be done, it takes money and it takes time. There's, some issues with the electrical service and generator. There's some different leaks and other maintenance issues that need to be done. As I said, ADA restroom upgrades are very much needed. And there's HVAC system rezoning is definitely something that's needed. There's a lot of people that's either hot or it's cold, or vice versa, because it was never rezoned as some different spaces were reconfigured in the building. So it creates some comfort issues for those working here. So one of the things we did as soon as we came to, as Katie described, we figured out how much space was really needed, and that came up to 53,000 square feet. The current City Hall is 35,000 square feet. So we did look at, okay, what can we fit within this space? Can we fit the current departments? Particularly with, and one of the things that really started this project was with municipal services operations, the MSO department moving out of the building. So it does free up some space. So what can we do? How can we take advantage of the space that we have here? We also looked at infilling this open area out here too, to take advantage of some additional space that we have within the building footprint, since we can't expand outside of it. But looking at that and accounting for some growth along with the current needs of each department, we could fit all the departments that are currently in the building, even with taking MSO out, with some room for growth, but really doesn't meet the full need that we're projecting for that 10-year growth. So that would leave still planning and development services and municipal court in lease space, either in Riverfront building or wherever the future for that would be. So speaking of PDS Municipal Court, they have their own challenges in the Riverfront building right now. There's a lot of maintenance issues there as well. I actually was at a meeting there last week. It can get very warm in there in the summer, as any of you that have attended a meeting there probably know. There's also been there's been some leaks and some other issues there. Their lease currently is out till 2028. So at that point in time, a decision would need to be made of whether that gets extended or whether they stay there. But if we were to continue to stay at the current City Hall, that municipal court and PDS would not be able to be moved back in with the other departments based on our needs study. But looking though, if we were to renovate City Hall, the cost for that, construction cost to renovate would be about $9 million, so roughly $256 a square foot. The soft costs, which those are furniture, fixtures, equipment, it's design and engineering fees, it's kind of the AV, other things like that that aren't actual like the building renovation costs. So for a total renovation cost of $12 million. But that would still leave PDS and Municipal Court in their lease space, as we talked, which is a $300,000 lease a year right now. So this doesn't account then for any, if we were to move out of City Hall, if there's any sale of that, so that's not accounted for in these numbers either. But we're looking at a renovation cost of about $12 million. So kind of summarize just what we looked at for City Hall in general. One of the great things that we haven't mentioned yet is the location. The location of City Hall is really very, very great. I think a lot of people that work here like it. The challenge is, though, we can't expand on this site. We're locked in, streets, railroad. There's just no way to expand. The building wasn't designed to go up, so we're kind of stuck with what we have here, and unfortunately, that's only 35,000 square feet. And with the disconnected floors, it also creates some challenges of laying out spaces within the building. And, there's also just challenges with parking and access to this building. So that led us to look at what are other potential opportunities. We looked at the Reuter building over here on New Hampshire. Well, it's a great building. It only has 40,000 square feet, and it also has a lot of some of the similar constraints of this building, where it's an older building, so it has limited floor plates, so you're still spread across multiple floors. It has some infrastructure that you really can't move, some shafts and some other things, so it really, again, has some broken floor plates that are really hard to make work for current workspace needs. And to create like a room that we would need for commission chambers would be really challenging there. So between the square footage, challenges there, we felt like that probably wasn't a great fit. We looked pretty deeply at the riverfront building. There's a ton of square footage over there. Unfortunately, it's in not great shape. There is a lot of work that would need to be done. There's some structural work, there's HVAC work, there's just a lot of deferred maintenance work that would need to be done there, and really it felt like it was very cost prohibitive to pursue that option. So those were really, we looked at, knowing that the location here is really great. We were trying to stay within this area, so we kind of had to start looking further out, which brought us to the Bluffs Drive building, which the square footage there is much closer to what our needs are. It's a 2-story building, so allows some more open spaces. And I'll let Katie talk a little bit further about that.
Yes, so if you're not aware, 2000 Bluffs is along 6th Street. There's access off of 6th Street there, and there's plenty of parking, as you can see from this aerial, and plenty of square footage. We know from our due diligence and from comments that there could be better site visibility and site access. The great thing is we have the ability to control and massage that to create exactly what we want and need for a new city hall. In future stages, we'd also be talking to transit about the potential of adding a bus stop closer, again, for accessibility. And as we mentioned, lots of parking space adjacent to the building, which is great not only for visitors, but again, it allows flexibility for future growth. It allows the city to put on events and have other amenities that we don't have right now because, as Gwen said, we are landlocked. Just some other views. Again, there's 2 entrances to the building, both of which can be ADA accessible and really create opportunities for both separation from public and private, but also create a welcoming atmosphere for everybody. Previously, this was a call center, which is great for us because it means it's an open blank floor plate, which you'll see comes into play when we look at the cost of renovating. Very little demo and lots of opportunity to rebuild exactly what we want. There is great natural light coming from clear story windows so that everybody has access to that. And as I mentioned, open floor plan. And both levels, it's a 2-story building. Both levels have daylight. Again, as we did with the existing City Hall building, we did a test fit to understand. This is not a layout of where departments go, but purely think of it like a puzzle of do all the pieces fit, and we confirmed, yes, they do fit, along with bringing in planning and development services, city commission, municipal court at an appropriate size, and then meeting space for community members as well as staff.
So some of the real positives we saw in this building is it does allow us to consolidate the departments in one location. So we're able to bring municipal court and PDS in with the other departments, create a lot more collaboration between the different city departments, and allow a one-stop shop. So a lot easier for the public when they come visit. I've seen it happen twice just out here in the lobby when I've been waiting for meetings. Someone comes in and they're actually trying to either get to municipal court or PDS, and they're over here and they're not sure where to go. So it could really help with those type of experiences for the public, because that's can be a very frustrating experience when all you're trying to do is either pay your bill or pay a fine or whatever, and you don't even know where to go. As Katie said, it allows some space to hold community events, both outside and inside. We're planning on some meeting space that could be open to the public for different events, and then also with the more open space on the site, there could be celebrations and other things could happen actually at City Hall outside of it. We've also talked about, for staff, there could be like food truck Fridays or fun things like that could happen just outside of City Hall. One of the other big concerns, as we were talking about, is just the safety and security, and a building that has a little more open layout like this would allow us to create very defined public spaces that are welcoming, that make you feel like you want to come in, that feel like it's a space the city has created for the community. And also allow people to access all the departments they need. People want to have a good, easy experience when they visit a public building like this. They want to come and be able to do their business and easily and find what they need. And currently, we heard that's a huge challenge for a lot of people because there's a lot of departments they can't get to without an escort. They don't know where to go. So we would be able to create spaces where they could get to all the departments they need, but also have staff-only areas that allow staff to feel safe and secure, but not be closed off from the public. There's also, when I say accessibility, the ADA accessibility, as we talked about, is much improved in this building. Also, with a lot of site improvements, we can improve just access to the site in general between vehicular access and bus access and walking and biking. There's opportunities for all of those. So again, it's really about improving the community experience, so when someone comes to visit City Hall, but also improving the employee experience. So spaces for employees to collaborate with each other. We heard a lot, it's hard to find a space here for either large meetings when they want their full department to meet, or when they just need to have a small meeting with one or two people and someplace that it can be quiet and that not be overheard. So providing those different spaces, and even a space for like heads down work sometimes is challenging. So really improving the employee experience with flexible spaces that really serve the needs of the current workforce. So just coincidentally, the cost to renovate this building from construction cost is $9.1 million, which is the same cost that it was for this building, but you're getting about 15,000 square feet more. So that comes in at about $181 a square foot. Right now, we are seeing new construction anywhere from $400 to $500 and up a square foot. So that really is a great bargain in that sense. Again, the soft costs added onto that, we're looking at about $11.7 million renovation cost. That does not include the acquisition cost of $4.2 million. So that would be on top of that 11.7. So again, a lot of the positives we really see in Bluffs Drive is, there's ample parking adjacent to the building. There's a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of things we can do with that space. It's really pretty much of a blank slate that we can create the spaces that you need. We can really improve the safety and security and a lot of the challenges that we're seeing here, and hopefully make it a better experience for both the public and the employees. So comparing the two, again, the cost to renovate is roughly the same. It's a little less for the Bluffs Drive building. But things to factor in is that PDS and Municipal Court would still need lease space for the current City Hall. And again, the acquisition costs for the Bluffs Drive building are not added in there. But we're looking at a little bit less of renovation costs for a lot more square footage with the Bluffs Drive. So overall, just comparing the two, again, a lot of the things here can be fixed. What we can't fix, though, is the square footage. We can't make the building bigger. The Bluffs Drive building has that ability for a lot of flexibility. It has space on the site. So those are kind of two of the things that really are a challenge this building has that we're able to overcome easily with that. We can address a lot of the other concerns of that site with just a lot of site improvements and really create a space that serves the current needs. So what happens to this building? I think that's a really big question. I don't have a great answer today, but as you can see, we're really early in this process, very, very early. So that would be a step that we would take, the city would take going forward. I mean, there's a lot of things there's a lot of possibilities. It could be repurposed, it could be sold, it could be studied as part of the North Lawrence Comprehensive Corridor Plan. So there's a lot of potential for this building that you as a city would need to review and figure out and address what the best next life would be for this site. So yesterday we held an open house with the city staff. We had a great turnout. It was really, really great. There was a lot of people that came and shared their feedback. We heard both positives and a lot of concerns as well. We heard a lot of positives about it'd be great to have the department center on roof. It would be great to have more spaces to meet and collaborate and to see other people. I think people feel kind of closed off here in their current workspaces. The idea of a building that had better ADA accessibility was really A lot of people were really interested in that. And just the improved access to departments for the public is something that we heard a lot as a positive. Biggest concern is just moving out of downtown. I can totally understand this. Employees here, they like the ability to walk to get lunch, to walk to get coffee. So definitely a concern of moving away from downtown and having those amenities just in that easy walkable distance. There's also concerns with the Bluffs Drive of just the access to the site and the site visibility. Those are two things, though, that we can work on at that site and overcome. We can work on the visibility through some improvements with the landscaping in other areas and just access to the site with some site improvements of adding bike paths and sidewalks that aren't having to go up and down a hill. And there's opportunities to improve that that we could explore. So the current status, there is an executed purchase agreement for the Bluffs Drive building, but it has to be approved by the governing body. So currently we're in the due diligence period. So that has included an in-depth inspection of the building, doing things like tonight, sharing information with the community and sharing information with city staff. So again, to kind of circle back on that timeline, again, we're very early on. We're in this pre-design phase. And just the future steps to go forward. The next step would really be, though, to move into schematic design and do more detailed layouts, really look at how everything fits in that building and how we would move forward with that. So next steps, I think currently right now it's planned that on the October 15th commission meeting, there would be a recommendation provided to the City Commission regarding the final purchase and closing on the Bluffs Drive building. And we provided a link there for the website specific to this project if there's any other questions or information that you could get from there. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any questions?
Can you tell me when the Bluffs building was built?
Oh, yeah, 1987.
So-
So it's not significantly newer than this one, but it is a little newer.
I have a question, Mayor.
Yep.
The City Hall has 35.5 thousand square feet, right? Does that include the riverfront property we rent?
No.
How much is that?
This building.
So how much space is there?
Hold on, let me know that off the top.
How much square footage they have?
Yeah, PDS. I don't know if I have that right here.
I can pull up, what did we have for square footage for them?
That's what I was trying to.
So that's with growth. So I think they're around 7,000 to 8,000 for planning and PDS services.
Got it.
And then I think another 3 at least for municipal court.
So 10 to 11.
Yeah, roughly.
Okay, I have another question. Did you say earlier that you calculated we need about 220 square feet per person?
That's the average when we look at calculating workspace for employees.
Is that typical in an industry?
Yes. And I would say that's typical in the Midwest. We see those numbers start to flex as we go out to the coasts.
Okay. So it indicated there would be other departments that could fold into this new building, potentially. Can you say are there any departments that would be folded in that aren't in this building already or over there at Riverfront?
It would be PDS and municipal court, yeah. Just
Okay.
those two right now.
Got it. One more. I want to go to page 12 of the slides.
I don't know if I have numbers.
12 of 88, where we're talking about meeting rooms and meeting spaces needed.
This one? Oh,
Yeah, that's pie chart right
pie
there.
chart, yep.
So when you're talking about size of meeting spaces needed, when you say existing, that's what we have right now, correct?
In terms of, hold on, let me go to that.
Yeah, that's what's existing now, and the meeting spaces needed, that was based on what some of the survey results said that people were needing beyond at each time. So as you can see, some things don't quite align.
Okay. So when you say existing is equal to one total,
Yeah, so right now, there's like one total meeting space.
For
and
that
that's not counting
size.
Commission chambers, but one total meeting space that can accommodate the 13 plus.
do you,
And that's actually in Riverfront.
did you calculate what we need?
Yes.
Yes.
So that is included, some of that is included in
Oh.
each department, and some of that is separate. For example, some departments are using meeting spaces so regularly that it makes sense to have a meeting space dedicated to their department. Others are maybe using larger meeting spaces that could be shared across departments. So that folds into that yellow community meeting number as well. So it's a little bit split between departments and community
Okay.
and meeting space.
So the Bluffs building has about 50,000 square feet.
Correct.
And what I'm seeing on that page right there is we need 53,000 square feet. So
Give or
how does
take.
that?
So again, since we're in the really early phases right now, this is where we're making sure that we have we have a larger tolerance for our square footage right now. I anticipate, again, some of those meeting spaces could again be shared, whether it's between departments or others. And then again, we're giving conservative numbers as it relates to workspaces, private offices, and other spaces as well. So all of those numbers will start to firm up, but that tolerance between 50 and 53 doesn't give me any pause about getting to what we need.
Okay, got it. One more question. Bear with me here. So you've indicated in your slides that this aligns with Plan 2040. Can you tell me how?
Yeah, so some of the things that align with Plan 2040 is we're reusing an existing building stock. That was definitely one of the things that was mentioned in the Plan 2040. Hang on, I have some notes directly related to that, so I want to make sure I quote this correctly here. And then, sorry, I'm still not finding the right one that I was looking for. Being sustainable and efficient. So there's actually a lot of opportunities at the building for sustainability. The building is all electric, which is a positive. There could be potential for solar on the site. Again, it's being able to reuse existing building stock is always most efficient. It's making sure in the Plan 2040 is, structures are maintained and upgraded. So this whole project in general, no matter what direction we go, fits in with that. And then, the reuse of the existing building again.
Okay, got it. That's good for right now.
Cool.
Just want to confirm the municipal service and PDS space is around 22,000 square foot.
How many? 22,000?
Commissioner Sellers?
Yeah, just one quick question. I don't know, I was trying to look to see if either Kathy or Melinda were on, but for a project like this, with the potential retrofitting, it reminds me of Central Station. So for our capital projects, I know we had talked about, we had created our policy around that, so just quick thoughts on, would the project for City Hall, would this be more of a LEED certified or LEED silver type project, and what would that look like? Or has those discussions started in this phase as well, or am I getting ahead of us here?
We know that it needs to be LEED certified and that there's sustainable things that we can do with this project. And if I go back to sorry, I don't mean to make everyone sick, but if you go back to where we are, we've got that sustainability review in our schematic design,
Okay.
so we'll delve deeper into it, but it is on our radar of something to address.
Okay, thank you. That's all, Mayor.
Thank you.
Does anyone know if we have any options left on the lease at Riverfront, or is 2028 the end of it?
That's the current information I have is the lease ends in 2028.
If you give me just a moment, I'll review and see if there are options. Get back with you.
Okay.
I'll scroll through the lease agreement.
It's about some of the questions came to my mind when you were speaking. I thought you did a great job of trying to make us understand, both sides of the coin. But neither side is currently ADA accessible or do not meet the parameters of the ADA currently. We're going to have to do ADA upgrades at this new site as well, correct?
It's very limited at the Bluffs building. There's currently ADA parking that meets all the requirements. The restrooms in there all meet the requirements. The west entrance is the only thing that would really need to be improved. There's also an elevator that connects the 2 floors, so that's already addressed. It's the west entry is only accessible with stairs, so that would be something that would need to be addressed. Otherwise, really, the site and the building are fully ADA compliant.
And I know you mentioned the challenges that the site presents topographically from an accessibility standpoint. Pedestrian, bike is, almost a no-go. It's, the air on coming from 6th Street is one way, and then coming down from the backside, it kind of drops off as well. Have you guys thought about providing access to the lot, to the street to the north, to provide some pedestrian accessibility, even though there's not sidewalks there, at least it's not a busy street and an access road to the turnpike? I was curious if you could, so just to the north of the site, there's a residential neighborhood that's on top of a hill, and I know the site goes all the way to it. It's not on the aerial right now, but I don't know how, I was just curious how you're going to make it easier to get to.
Yeah, absolutely.
From an accessibility standpoint, given its topographic concerns and how much money might be involved in doing so. So that's my first question.
So we haven't looked to the north, and that's something that we would do. I think that's a great idea. One of the things that we talked about is down at the south, creating access and cutting across and creating a path just to the south. If you can see my cursor, just to the south, so that you wouldn't have to go up that hill and you could have a flat path with access to directly address what you're saying, because that is something that we're aware of.
Okay, great. And then I don't know if this has come up, but I know, we're building this MSO campus, and there's going to be a lot of needs. Some of the things you described, I think, might help from the common space standpoint. I wondered if any of our needs that you addressed might be met some of the facilities that were incorporated in the already on scheduled MSO project. Curious if there's any common, meeting rooms or space that we could utilize in the event that we don't have quite enough space for that.
Yeah, I think we could look into it. I'm already with discussions with the project manager on the MSO campus just to share ideas and, learn from the analysis they've done to understand what we need to do more here. But we could look at shared spaces between the 2 campuses here.
Because you mentioned there might be a deficit, and I think Commissioner Self,
Yep.
somebody pointed it out earlier that, so anyway, just so there's not a deficit immediately once we come along. And then I guess that's it. And have you looked at the difference in the operational costs between retrofitting this building versus retrofitting the other building in general? Is there an idea which one might be a lower cost operation? From renovation, if we renovated this building, did what we talked about?
Yeah, we
idea?
haven't done a full assessment of that. That would actually be part of that sustainability workshop, would be to address what those ongoing operational costs would be particularly from a, utility standpoint.
Right.
So no, that hasn't been done at this point.
Okay, thank you. That's all, Mayor, thank you.
I guess related to that would be, I guess a benefit of renovating another building is you want to be working in it at the same time you're renovating.
Correct.
I assume it's too early to know, but it would seem like we'd have a long phasing plan, or we'd have to move out for a year and move back in or something?
Completely.
What?
You have to move out if you renovated here because of the upgraded electrical service.
Oh,
It's unfortunately not, which we assumed at first that it would be typically divided up by floor, so you could work on one floor and the other, but the way the electrical service in this building is set up, it would have to be basically all shut down, at least for a certain amount of time. So it creates a lot of challenges with any sort of phased construction.
well, that would have to be a significant cost
And
to
it
move
does
everybody
add
out for a
costs,
year
yes,
and move
which
them
is
back.
not- we did account for some of that within the soft costs, which is one of the reasons why you see the soft costs for City Hall being more than for the Bluffs Drive building. So some of that is accounted for in those soft costs when that $12 million budget. But again, it's hard to know. We just took some assumptions based on like what would we need for some leased space during that time. But that doesn't include if there was any like upgrades needed to that space. So there's or any moving costs necessarily to that. So there's definitely some things that would need to be addressed related to that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a quick comment on that, both with PDS and this building, there's not very many places in town that have 30,000, let alone 50,000 square feet.
We have discovered that.
Yes. So trying to, I mean, we might be in 3 or 4 locations for a year or whatever. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a couple questions. I know that you were talking about what the cost would be, like square foot, if it was a new build. Did you scale it out to like an entirely new build, what that would look like?
We did not do that, but again, I would at least do $450 a square foot, and it could definitely be more than that. But I would, take that 50,000 square feet times 450 would get you in the ballpark.
Okay. Just to, I've received some emails from folks just, were curious about that aspect of it and why we're considering retrofitting either this building or another building to go ahead and meet our needs. But yeah, I'd love if you could send it. That'd be great. And then, I didn't really see here. Granted, we're just receiving information and we're just talking about the possibility of the Bluffs building. But within that plan, if it was to proceed further, is there some sort of plan to reach out to the neighborhood involved, in the surrounding area? Because I was listening to Vice Mayor Dever and, the entrance in the past, but I'm pretty sure the neighborhood would be very interested in, what exactly would be going on with the site as well. So I didn't really see that, and I just wanted to make sure that that was part of any potential plan.
Yeah, I think we didn't really make a community engagement plan yet for that next step because not knowing like what exactly that next step was yet. But that would definitely be a piece of that, I'm sure, is creating that next community engagement, which would include the surrounding neighborhood.
Okay.
I got one more question. The cost that you're projecting to do the Bluffs Drive property, I'm assuming then that those costs include solar as well as meeting the lead?
They include meeting lead. I'm not sure that they include solar.
They do not include solar.
But we're indicating that that's one of the Plan 20.
It's an opportunity on the site, but it's currently not in that budget, no.
Okay.
Any additional questions?
I guess
Yep.
she made me think of one.
Yeah,
So
Vice
have
Mayor
you
Dever.
guys calculated the surface area of the roof and determined whether or not you feel like we could be self-sustaining at this location with the power needs that we have? Or is it going to be a 10% use, or do you think we could achieve some sort of real, reduction in our energy use through that? I mean, that's something that I guess we'd really need to know before, given the power that is consumed on premises and electrical service from all the HVAC, that's a high demand. So I was just curious what that plan would even look like.
We haven't, but we could do a quick calculation. I think the other thing to think about is there is so much ample parking, thinking outside of just the roof of the building,
Stalls.
and what else we could use that space for.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
With that being said, it's showing roughly, I'm trying to remember when we were out there, it's like the different parking spots and it's parking lots, and then there's the one further back. The one that's closer to the building, would that accommodate all staff being in the location, or would we be able to, or would staff be utilizing both those locations? As far as the parking lot that's further back from the building?
There'd have to be a little balance of like how many spaces are set aside for public, but we'd be really close with the west and in the initial parking lot on the east. We may have to extend just a little bit into that next tiered parking lot to accommodate everybody. But it wouldn't be all the way into that third tier by any means.
So we wouldn't even be able to, we wouldn't be utilizing the third tier?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay.
And even when we calculate parking, we typically don't calculate that every employee will be there at any given time, just to understand how we do that.
And square foot wise, what are we looking at for that third parking tier? Do we know the square footage of that?
Oh,
I
know
don't off
that.
the top of my head, but that's
Okay.
something we'd easily
Yeah.
find out.
It's big.
I've got one more question, Mayor.
Commissioner Larson?
I said that last time, but anyway, at least one more. So we've got 35,000 square feet at City Hall, another 22,000 square feet at PDS over here. So that's about 57,000 square feet, but we're saying we can fit all that into the 50?
Yeah, so some of that is also right-sizing the spaces that you have now. So just with the inefficiency, that's where we really start to look at what the departments need versus what you have today. Does that make sense?
In the 35K for here, we've got a lot of space that's not
You've got
usable.
extra bathrooms, extra vertical circulation, just the way the space is laid out. If we had the footprint of this Bluffs Drive is also much more efficient as you're laying out a typical office building as well, so you gain a lot of efficiencies there.
Got it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any additional questions? Not seeing any. All right, I'll open it up for public comment. Thank you all.
Thank you.
So a couple times on your slides there, I saw safety and security mentioned, and that has relevance to this sign because Courtney Shipley told the original lie about safety and security in here, claiming that people questioning commissioners as they walked out created a safety and security risk. I noticed that that was a buzzword in the beginning. And why don't you put that slide back up there, Kurt? Let's go through and let's see how many times safety and security was mentioned throughout the body of the actual presentation. I noticed that when the staff were asked, that in the staff slide, that safety and security wasn't there. I noticed that in a lot of the feedback they got, it wasn't safety and security that they were getting feedback from. I don't have a real issue with the needs of the city being met, but I do have an issue with them couching it in some kind of a safety and security thing to perpetuate this narrative that people who are upset with your government are a safety and security risk. What this building does do, however, is it puts you out of sight and it makes it impossible for people to properly protest your asses. Puts you up on a hill behind a bluff and says, we're on a mountain above you and you can't come protest because we're going to be the places that we can protest. Out on 6th Street with the traffic going by at 40 miles an hour? Or are we just going to come up next to the building where nobody can see that there's a protest and maybe join in and want to be a part of it? I see this as potentially another move to shut out the people from being able to express their opinions of city leaders without retribution and without those city leaders running and crying to the top of a hill or to the back room. And I mean, that's how I see this. And then again, we just had this big, long discussion about all the money that this county is spending. And Courtney Shipley and her lies were a part of that big spending program that we had for several years around here. The reason this is becoming germane to me is because I know she's planning on running again because she's got a campaign site up where she's collecting money. So we're going to continue to talk about the lies about safety and security, about spending money. You guys are going to crap down another $9 to $11 million, and we just got done talking about needing to crimp down and do with what we got and things like this. So I think we can do a little bit more with what we got. You've got a building right now on Bob Billings Parkway that the police department apparently didn't need when they built their new $20 million police station, but we're still going to hold that for the police. Why don't we put some city staff in there? Why don't we utilize some of these other spaces we have around the city? Or is it just one big lie? Is it just one big lie that we tell everybody? How about we save some of the taxpayers' money and just quit throwing it away on feelings and trying to hide from people? Because that's what that Bluffs project looks to be.
Thomas Duggar, new resident, 66046 zip code. Thank you, Mike, for bringing up operational costs. I saw a huge missing part. I'm big on green, zero carbon, to get down to where we have zero cost to heat and air condition a new facility. I'm also missing out on bringing in other departments in, so we have a one-stop shop like Parks and Rec. Bus transportation system could be brought in. That way, people have fewer places they have to go and find them because they're scattered all out. And there's also the option, since you're going to do solar in that, if you built a brand new building, you could design it all the way down to take advantage of solar, wind, and other geothermal to heat, cool, and eliminate all the cost to it, to where you are actually selling services back to the electric company. Any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Chris Flowers, and I'd like to mention a way I think the city staff thinks it'll be safer is because if you move it over there, it'll be harder for all the homeless people to come here, you know? Like, they're around downtown now, and how many buses are gonna go over there? I mean, this sounds like it's gonna be easier for the West Side people who have cars to go there, but I think for poor people, I think keeping City Hall downtown is, I'd rather have that because this is where the buses come. There's homeless people around here. I think everyone should, I think this location allows greater access for the public. And I think you should approach it from what's best for the public as opposed to what's best for city staff. And I also do agree, I think this is trying to, because we do have protests that happen at City Hall, and it's usually against this. It's usually against the city. I don't think city would prefer to have those protests going on in a less visible location. Thank you.
Could we keep all the external conversations or talking down while people are speaking or in between?
And that podium does raise and lower.
Yeah.
You're welcome, it just helps with the volume if it's closer.
Tristan Rethman, 66046. I think the Bluffs Drive has a lot of potential, but I will echo the concerns by Mike Deaver and a couple of the speakers that accessibility, not just ADA compliance, but it's kind of tucked out off of 6th Street, right in the corner of a very high traffic, high speed road. Also just visibility, seeing it from the road. I do think there could be a lot done to make it more visible and more accessible. I just want to maintain a focus on that, as well as the sustainability efforts mentioned. I know that's a little bit further in the plan, but to just make sure we circle back to solar capacity as well. Mike Deaver talked about it, how much that would cover our costs in the new location, and about how much it would cost itself. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jackie Schaefer. I live at 1930 West 5th Street, which is directly across from the backside of the Bluffs building. I did not live there when the building was built. I believe the original occupants were Sally Mae building, And I also believe the neighbors to the north have a covenant of some type in place with the owners of the Bluff building to prevent access onto Fifth Street. Fifth Street up there is narrow.
Ma'am, could you
Yes.
pause for a second? Sir, could you cease your conversation while that lady is speaking? Thank you very much. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Fifth Street is narrow. It's almost a country road up there. Sometimes it's hard for two cars to even pass, and going downhill in the winter is extremely dangerous. My neighbors at the bottom of the hill pull cars out from their ditch frequently. It's just a narrow street, and I'd really recommend that you look into what this covenant is that might be in place. There's also, I believe, as part of the covenant, there needed to be some sort of tree-lined buffer between the building and the neighborhood. So it's just something else to consider. And I think the neighbors, some of us would actually like to have City Hall as neighbors, but we really are opposed to any sort of access up onto, road access onto Fifth Street. So, thank you. Do you have questions of me?
Well, we don't ask questions.
Oh, okay. Sorry, thank you.
My name is Dr. Justin Spees, and I wanted to present an idea to you guys about what to do with this building, this empty building, if you build City Hall in a different location. Let's turn it into a homeless shelter. And, I think that that's a good idea. I heard that idea. I was walking by a group of people, and they were talking about it, and I stopped and I said, that's a good idea. And they said, thanks. And I said, are you guys Christians? And they said, yeah, we are. How'd you know that? And I said, well, that's such a good idea. Had to have come from Christians because they're good people. They're good people. Now, that idea could have come from other groups of people, but this happened to come from Christians. And I agree. I think Christians are really good people, despite what's been allowed to be said negatively about them in here. And so I just wanted to take the opportunity to just talk about how good Christians are, to present the second half of the story that was allowed to be spoken in here about how bad they are when it comes to the homeless population. And I mentioned this last week, but I think it's worth mentioning again. When I was a student at Washburn University, I did a service learning project at the old homeless shelter here in town. And I found out then that when it gets cold and there's overflow in the winter months, the surrounding churches there that used to be surrounding that old shelter would take in the overflow of the homeless. And I thought that was just great. The Christian churches there are doing great Christian things. And that's a testament to how good Jesus is. Jesus empowered those Christian churches to do the right thing. And I think we should all do the right thing when it comes to what we want to do with, in this case, the homeless. And I wanted to take a moment here on that note just to say a prayer, if I could, real quick. Dear Lord Jesus, thank you for this great country where we're allowed to come in here, exercise our free rights to speak, where we're allowed to sit and be hearers of free speech so that we're able to continue to learn and grow. And although this commission doesn't see it that way, I pray that you open their ears and open their eyes and make them more American and allow free speech in here so that we can use our voices. And us as listeners, we can use our ears to learn and grow from each other. As Lawrence likes to say, they're so inclusive and open-minded. I pray that this commission lives up to that standard. Amen.
David Baston. It seems like earlier this year or later last year that the remodel or renovation or whatever you call it for here was going to be $6 million. And I see now it's moved up to $12 million. So following that, does that mean this $15.2 million next year will turn into $30 million for that property that you're thinking about moving City Hall to? Just a question. I don't know, but and yeah, and that is an old building. Unlike this does have for the public when you come in. It's a big space, more just newer, so a lot more room. I think that building out there, I don't know what the ceiling heights are, but I mean, as a whole, it's going to actually feel a little more confined to the public, if that's what your concerns are about the public. I do see that if the public is allowed to go back into that, if you guys do get it, I don't know whether they're going to be or not. It seems like here you can't really get around too good. So, but yeah, just some things to look at. Yeah, the access over there isn't the greatest right off 6th Street. So I don't know if that'll be and I don't really see much of a way to fix that, especially the part going down to Iowa Street, but appreciate your time. Thank you. Oh, one real quick. Sorry about that. And I'm a Christian. So. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Oh, sibilance. Hey. Courtney Shipley. I don't know that anyone is arguing that City Hall isn't a 1980s cave, although I think we should all give some respect to the architects who built it. I think one of them passed away recently. I do also want to say that I didn't see in the presentation any mention, as I understand there was some future consideration given by those architects to expand. I didn't see that particularly in the presentation from Multi-Studio. I think that would be helpful to you to understand. The other thing I would love to see more conversation between you all is the realities after COVID about who does and doesn't work in the buildings. I call and interact with city staff somehow still frequently, and many people do not work from this building. They are at home, and that's fine with me. I think that this is the future of the workforce, and we all need to get it. As long as they answer the phone, it's fine with me. But that doesn't mean that taxpayers need to hold space for that, or that there aren't other considerations that should be made for that. So I hope you all have a real substantive conversation about who is and isn't working from these buildings. So yeah, real data I'd like to see about that, about the remote and hybrid staff. I hate to say this, but there is a little bit of a false narrative here about when the Bluffs became part of the conversation. Anyone in the public can go and find that in the agreements with Multi-Studio, and when you all hired them. They did not discover that. That was discovered before that, and I think you all need to be clear about that. Siloing is another conversation. As often as I have conversations about siloing between departments, geographical location to where you work will not solve that. That's about leadership, and that's your leadership. Whether MSO talks to other departments, Parks and Rec, that is about how you help them do that. That's from your leadership. It has nothing to do with this building or any of the other properties that you own. Just to be clear, I am saying you should not purchase more property. I hate to agree with people, but I do, and I said it a long time ago. It is in fact hidden. It takes itself away from the bookending of our heart of Lawrence, having City Hall at one end and having the county seat at the other end. Huge mistake. Biblical proportions.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. Any on Zoom, Sherry?
If anyone on Zoom would like to speak, please raise your hand.
I think I see Julie Jones.
Yeah, I'm moving her to panelist. It'll be just 1 second. Julie Jones. Julie, you can go ahead and provide your comments.
Hi, thank you. Julie Jones, 4726 West 24th Street here in Lawrence. Ms. Shipley, just before me, kind of hit on some things that I had already was making notes about. I didn't understand if, first of all, where was the expansion already in the new building? If you go in the county records and look at the actual square footage from the appraisal card, and add it up, it only comes up to 49,194 square feet. And I also wondered about the current building. Had it been looked at structurally since the lawsuit had been filed by the owners of the Marriott about the disturbance of the land when the city put in the access road? So I wondered if that was kind of also in the background of the city thinking maybe we better get out of this building before it starts falling apart. Just curious about that. And so let's see. I think that's it, because I didn't want to repeat everything Ms. Shipley just said about it's. I mean, I get it. Moving would be nice for you. I have a disability myself, and I personally have not had a problem getting in and out of that building. It'd be nice to park closer, but I can still get in and out of that building. I saw a wheelchair person going in. I don't understand why the public's not allowed to go beyond the first floor. Let's see, what was the other thing I was thinking about? You already talked about the planning group moving out of the first floor, so that opens it up. And a couple of people who worked there, one person specifically stated that there's lots of empty offices and space in that building, so it could just kind of be reallocated. I'm a former teacher, and hey, we're masters at reallocating, so if you want to know how to work it all together and work it all into a room with 30 kids and everybody's not on top of each other, just let us know. We'll work it. Any teacher can show you in 30 minutes how to reorganize that space and make them all fit. Thank you.
Stephen Watts.
I thank you. I want to first point out that there are no minutes being taken of public comment if the current minutes reflect the way the new system is. What's the point in providing comment if there's not going to be any notes taken of it in the meeting, in the minutes that you approve? It doesn't even say.
Mr. Watts, let's go ahead and keep it.
Yeah, I'm predicating my remark first, Mayor.
Okay,
And
I just want to make sure.
What is the point in making the comment if no notes are taken of it? It doesn't even put in there, public comment was received. Okay, moving forward, were you aware of that, Mayor?
Sir, if you would.
Okay, yeah, you see how this works. We are in austere times. Do you think that they're going to get better, or do you think they're going to get worse? What is your own personal portfolios showing? The town can't even pay to repair a wading pool. We're talking about building a new headquarters. This is very curious. It's also very curious because the telephones are not answered, because people are not there. You can leave a message. Maybe the message taker will give it to the employee, and maybe the employee will call you back when they get good and ready, and they'll try one time, maybe. And if you're not there, too bad. So do we really need a bigger place? I don't know. I'm now noticing that the minutes or the notes that I sent you with respect to the concept of doing more with less evidently didn't get published either, but it's a valid concept. Why can't we help our staff understand, don't ask for more, figure out how to do more with less? They have just received extremely generous pay raises. Did this pay raise purchase better thinking, or are we still in the myopia and mired in, we've always done it this way, instead of trying to find out how to maximize the space that we currently have? As I understand it, citizens can't even go from the first floor up. That's it. You can walk into the lobby and that's all there is. Is that correct? Is that information correct? The town commissioner told me that. So, if this is the case, why do we need all of this space? I understand if we don't buy now, it'll cost more later. These are the problems that we confront. Thank you.
That's all the public comment, Mayor.
Okay, bringing it back to us. Any additional questions or comments on the presentation?
I guess just a question, what's the plan going forward? I mean, it's coming back on October 15th. Are we going to have some meetings or?
Yes, so the plan moving forward will come back on October 15th, provide a recommendation once we're done with the due diligence period and to move forward with the purchase.
Okay. And obviously, some of the questions tonight from the public and otherwise seem like obviously things we would like some answers to.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I don't. So, thank you very much, Omar.
Mayor, there was a question asked about the riverfront lease.
Mm-hmm.
It is for a single 10-year term, and it expires on June 30th of 2028. There's an option to purchase in the contract, however.
Option to
And
purchase.
a right of first refusal.
Okay. All right. Look forward to more information on that. Moving us on to item F, work session items. The work session provides an opportunity for the City Commission to discuss items in greater detail. The Commission will take no binding action on items presented during this time. Work session topics are eligible for public comment. Members of the public will be limited to 3 minutes for comments. And since folks are exiting, I'll give them a second or two before we start into this. Okay, the first one and only one is receive strategic plan update from the Equity and Inclusion Commitment Team. All right. Dr. Mohammed. All right.
Sorry, take a moment to pull it up here.
Hang on just a second. Okay, that's you.
Thank you. I'd like to control it from here.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Kurt. Okay, good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm Faris Mohammed, Director of Equity and Inclusion, as well as I serve as the champion for our Equity and Inclusion strategic commitment area for our strategic plan. And so I'm the third commitment champion to come before you. So I'll kind of give you all tonight a high-level overview of equity and inclusion, some of the work and things that's happening there. Also, some of the slides throughout here might look a little bit different than what was submitted to you all last week. There was a few little minor tweaks here and there, but nothing substantial. So just as a high-level overview of the agenda, I'll speak a little bit about the definition related to the equity and inclusion commitment area, sort of what we do as it pertains to the crosswalk between the commitment area and the outcome area, as well as talk about some of the key priorities and strategies that's at work, and then some of the key performance indicators that might be commonly referred to as KPIs throughout the presentation. So of course, as you all are familiar with, these are the 6 commitment areas that are embedded in our city strategic plan: the community engagement, efficient and effective process, equity and inclusion, sound fiscal stewardship, engaged and empowered team, as well as environmental sustainability. And I just want to really highlight one of the key parts here that talks about in our commitment, the language here is the way we do our work is as important as what we do. That's sort of the idea that our strategic plan is built on. That's why we have our commitment area. So tonight, as mentioned, I'll talk a little bit about equity and inclusion and what that means as far as this 6 key areas go. And so this here is the, as far as equity and inclusion, this is the language embedded in our strategic plan, and I will read this right here as relates to equity and inclusion. So fair and impartial delivery of services so that no group is disadvantaged or burdened, along with having inclusive representation and participation for all. Inclusion and racial equity drive the culture of our organization and our community. When we intentionally prioritize race, it can no longer be used to predict life outcomes, and outcomes are improved for all. We remove systemic barriers to reconcile historic injustices and their continued presence in our work. And so part of the work, as we talked about a little bit on the previous slide, the way we do our work is just as important as how we do it. Part of the job related to the city and trying to really disseminate this message throughout our organization is the why this is important, right? Because as you heard from previous commitment champions as well as outcome champions about the community kind of speaking to us saying, hey, these are the things that we find to be important. And that's how these things really pretty much landed in our city strategic plan. So helping all city employees better understand the why as well as the how and what this looks like as far as how it's infused into the various departments and divisions and what are some of these measures that we're going to talk a little bit more about as relates to the KPIs or key performance indicators. And so again, just to keep it the consistency, you all are pretty much familiar with these 5 outcome areas. A couple of slides later, we're going to talk about how these sort of intersect related to the outcomes and the commitments and how they kind of create these key performance indicators. And of course, you all have seen this slide here previous and some of the previous commitment presentations. And so I'll just kind of talk a little bit further about it and kind of maybe drill down just a little bit further. Of course, we have the outcome areas going across that's abbreviated. So unmistakable identity, strong welcome in neighborhoods, et cetera. And of course, down here, we've got the commitment areas, which I just discussed on a previous slide. But if we go here for an example to equity and inclusion, this 3rd commitment area, and drive this across, where we see the number 5 here at unmistakable identity. Here's one of our key performance indicators. And so under unmistakable identity, number 5, that's one of the KPIs that speaks to the percent of Black, Indigenous, and people of color, commonly referred to as BIPOC, residents rating the community as welcoming. So this is one of the areas where we're trying to, again, gather data to kind of have a better sense on how do some of the racial minorities throughout our community who might fall under the sort of large umbrella term of BIPOC community members, how do they see City of Lawrence as a welcoming place? And what's the work that the city as employees and staff as an organization needs to do to ensure that we're fostering these sort of welcoming, inclusive environments to where everyone can see the City of Lawrence as a sort of an equitable community of choice as it relates to belonging. And again, just driving over farther a little bit more across, if we keep with equity and inclusion, go to the end over here. Under citywide, we see the number 5, and that's talks about our Municipal Equality Index score, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that under strategies at work. And then under equity and inclusion, there's a total of 22 key performance indicators. Again, I just spoke about unmistakable identity number 5, as well as down here at the very bottom, the overall Municipal Equality Index score. And so all these 22 key performance indicators are infused throughout our entire city strategic plan, broken out into these 6 outcome areas.
Ferris, can you, excuse me, sir, can you cease the conversation, please? Thank you. Please continue, Dr. Mohammed.
Thanks. And so just again, to drive it home a little bit farther so we can see how these key areas intersect between the outcome and some of the commitment areas. You can see with these bubbles here, unmistakable identity, strong welcome in neighborhood, some of the actions and initiatives that are happening to sort of support these outcome areas. And I know this font here may be pretty small, so I'm going to walk through a few of these examples to kind of, this is just a snapshot. I'll try to dig a little deeper in some of the upcoming slides here. So as we see on this slide here, when we think in terms of the outcome area of unmistakable identity really focuses on Lawrence being a welcoming community. To better help with this, we rolled out here the Intercultural Development Inventory, which is commonly referred to as the IDI. And this really assesses the intercultural competence and provides customized plans to develop cultural understanding. So we did a pilot program within our organization of about 70 employees to kind of have a better sense of where's our level of understanding as it relates to cultural competence. So ranging everything from what might be considered a monocultural mindset along this continuum over here to what might be referred to as an intercultural mindset or a global mindset. And this just really kind of help us better understand that not just within our organization, but the community we serve, that people come from all walks of life. And so what does it mean to have a better sense of how people think differently and what that means as far as how we need to sort of make sure we're adjusting accordingly to provide equitable services to community members. And then over here on this other side of the slide here, we have also the formation of MOXIE, which is the Women's Employee Resource Group. Again, this is sort of the work that we've done internally to kind of figure out what are some of the unique needs that maybe some of the women within our workforce might be interested in to make sure that all needs are sort of being met. And so we started off with a sort of an affinity group, if you will, started off with the women in our workforce, and we've reached out to give consideration to some other sort of groups, if you will. So we're in the process of trying to figure out what are some other groups where we might have a critical mass to kind of have a better sense of some of the needs in our organization to really contribute to that sense of belonging across the board. And then here, related to strong welcoming neighborhood, and again, strong welcoming neighborhood has a focus on ensuring that there is there's equitable access to safe and affordable housing. And so, as you all are familiar, with the passage of Ordinance 9960, which kind of really focuses on source of income discrimination, the passing of this really helps with the expanding of housing protections to include source of income, domestic survivors, immigration status, really helping to benefit marginalized populations so that we can continuously ensure that there is equitable access to safe, affordable, and quality housing for all in our community. Again, going to this outcome area related to safe and secure, which safe and secure really focuses on ensuring that Lawrence is a community where all people feel safe. And so we think in terms of the passage of Ordinance 10003 on natural hair discrimination, commonly referred to as the Crown Act. This really helped with the expansion or helped to expand anti-discrimination laws to include protection against biases based on hairstyles or texture, particularly targeting anti-Black racism. And as well as, again, building on that safe and secure piece, we also had the passage of Ordinance 9999, declaring Lawrence a safe haven. So with that, city staff was able to, at the direction of city commissioners, was able to kind of really partner with community organizations to help strengthen those protections for transgender individuals to really promote inclusivity throughout our community again, make sure everybody feels welcome and safe. Similarly, again, another outcome area where we can see some equity and inclusion work happening, centers on prosperity and economic security. Recently, we had the program that was implemented related to anchor procurement through the National League of Cities. We was able to partner with a startup, sort of a nonprofit in our organization, Black 30, and they helped with some of the involvement related to anchor procurement, which was to really help to better establish a functional and healthy relationship with the city's largest institutions. This relationship centers on promoting the use and inclusion of minority-owned businesses in event planning. So there's lots of work happening in partnerships with KU, or University of Kansas, in their athletics department and trying to help with some vendoring and a couple other things. So some exciting work that's happening there. And then I know previously you had Evan Carenta come before us and kind of speak about some of the ADA plan that's sort of happening related to American Disability Act. And we can see some, again, different staff throughout our organization from different departments, different divisions, all partnering to kind of figure out what does better accessibility throughout our city looks like. And then for our sort of citywide area, as you all are familiar with, we have our MEI scorecard, which is the Municipal Equality Index score from the Human Rights Campaign. Last year, the city of Lawrence, for the first time in history throughout the state, was the first city to 2 consecutive years in a row score a perfect 100, which kind of really looks at how welcoming of a community we are related to LGBTQ plus community members. And it looks at these sort of 5 key areas right here. So non-discrimination laws, municipality as an employer, services and programs, law enforcement, as well as leadership on LGBTQ plus equality. And they really help look across the city organization, different size cities of 503, I believe, cities. And so we're able to benchmark against the other 500 plus cities to see how we're doing as far as being welcoming and inclusive. We also previously just received our draft scorecard related to the scores, which I'm not at liberty to disclose yet until they give us permission to, but the city has good reason to believe we should fare pretty well in this upcoming ranking as well. And so one of the things that we've really been focusing on as an organization to try to really help better advance our city strategic plan is more so collecting data and trying to make sense out of some of the data. And so here I'm going to speak a little bit about our employee engagement survey. I'm not going to dig too far into this because I know we have our engagement engaged and empowered champion that's going to come before you and may want to kind of touch on this a little bit farther. But being able to better make data-driven decisions based on really having that data to kind of figure out where are the areas in our organization we need to kind of, there's opportunities that exist that we can improve upon. And for equity and inclusion, I thought this one was very interesting from our last survey based on some of these key findings here. So 61% of our city staff who participated in the survey felt that their job is a positive part of their life. So I kind of interpret that to mean this is the percentage of employees, again, those who participated, who feel like they have a sense of belonging in the workplace. And so we're still just trying to make sense out of some more of this data to kind of see what other things we need to be doing within the city. Let me dial back here. And then the second piece here, I couldn't see because it's covered up here. But 58% of city employees feel the city values inclusion in the workplace. So again, there's a lot of ways we probably can interpret that, but in the grand scheme of things, there's opportunity there to kind of increase this number here. So now that we have the data, we can put plans in place to kind of figure out how can city employees, thanks Kurt, do a better job of making sure that the city as an organization, it's important that employees understand we do value inclusion in the workplace. Uh-oh, wait. I got control, Kurt?
I'm not trying to, you got it.
Okay, thanks. And again, building further upon the data piece and trying to make more so data-driven decisions, the city was recently able to sort of get back our analysis of our city's workforce. So here we kind of are in the process of finalizing our affirmative action plan. So developing and implementing programs to ensure that there's non-discrimination in our workforce. So we got back the data to kind of look at all our employees across all organizations to kind of have a better sense of what the makeup is related to sort of race and gender, but also positioning. So who's in what sort of positions and what job categories and job classifications in our organizations to see to what degree are we reflecting the community that we serve. So this is something, and also trying to see where there might be what might be commonly referred to as underutilization, meaning that if in some areas or some departments of our workforce, it's 1%, but out in the community, or the data shows that there's X amount of people of this demographic who's able to perform these job functions, then we have to reflect internally and figure out what is the work that we need to do internally that allows for us to do better job marketing or recruiting. So whether that's modifying some of the language in our job descriptions, whether that's who we market to, who we partner with, connect with, et cetera, So we're developing some goals right now. We're kind of finalizing that piece to kind of figure out where's the underutilization in our workforce and what are the action steps that we can take over the next several years to kind of improve in those key areas. And then here, as far as like, again, strategies at work, some of you all are familiar that we recently was able to sort of partner with the Department of Justice, as well as with our police department to kind of do some collaboration within the city to strengthen police and community partnerships. The Equity and Inclusion Department helped serve as part of that planning committee and make sure that we was able to reach out and have other key members in our community and leaders be also a part of that, to kind of really hear in authentic voices and authentic ways to say, hey, these are the concerns we have, here's the things that we would like to see different in our community, and how we can kind of take that feedback and start to incorporate some better things as it align with our safe and secure outcome in our city strategic plan. And then again, talking more about collaboration, the city of Lawrence had the opportunity to partner with the University of Kansas almost 2 years ago at this point to do some international work related to racial equity throughout the African diaspora. This was a very unique and selective program. As you can see here, it's a consortium with the Humanities Center and Institutes of Mellon Global Humanities Institute is a partnership between these 4 universities. So for representing the United States, we had the University of Kansas, representing Senegal, we had the University of Sheikh Anta Diop, representing Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, where this took place, and they served as the host. We had the University of Dar es Salaam, and then in Brazil, we had the Federal University of Bahia. And so lots of conversation and rich conversations surrounding historical inequities, racial equities, and the city was able to kind of lean in on those conversations to say, here's some of the things that's happening in the city of Lawrence. But more importantly, it was an opportunity to really partner, collaborate, and share resources with each other to figure out how to overall improve. And so further building up on the conversation surrounding resources, the city is a member of an organization called GARE, which is Government Alliance on Race and Equity. And they sort of have a 4-step process that they look at as relates to advancing equity and racial equity. So it's visualize, normalize, organize, and operationalize. So really having that sort of shared vision for what's the future of, in this case, our city related to racial equity and our strategic plan, and how do we start to normalize some of these conversations, practices, organize around that, and really put plans together to operationalize these things. So it's not just theoretical, but we have real key performance indicators, things that we're actually able to measure and say, we're operationalizing these things and we're seeing the needle move. And again, these are just more examples of some of the resources and toolkits that offered through GARE to help sort of advance some of our key performance indicators. Not just with GARE, but also with Race Forward. These are some of the tools and resources that we've previously used with some of our advisory boards when they're having conversations to put together policy recommendations. They have something that allows to guide them to arrive at policy recommendations pertaining to equity. And okay, I think that's it. Oh, so just to this point right here, all these sort of resources that I just kind of shared on this slide and previous slides, these are things that will also be able to be found in our newly modified intranet, so all city staff can have access to many of these different resources to be able to have those conversations at the departmental level, division level, as well as all throughout our organization. And so that's real fast. That's our quick high-level overview of that equity and inclusion commitment area for our city strategic plan. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for first? Thank you.
Dr. Muhammad, I had a quick question.
Yes.
So on a lot of, specifically, thank you for the presentation. Under unmistakable identity, and there's other places where we contract out for our surveys. And oftentimes there is an additional funding for sampling for particular BIPOC communities. One of the things I know that I gripe about is just the lack of multivariate data analysis, or at least disaggregating the data. So my question is, for you, understanding, you had made a point to say when your slide about the 58% that something it's interpreted as this, meaning that you don't really have the ability to disaggregate the data as you would that be a benefit to you for some of these KPIs where it's just like percentage of BIPOC community members that believe this? Because we can see that in some of the oversampling, but not to a point on other things. So where we don't have the ability to do oversampling or because of its cost prohibitiveness to it. So I guess my question is for you, how are you navigating that space? Are you recommending that for any of these surveys where we have these type of KPIs that we need, that oversampling is not optional, but it is the requirement? Those are, that's where my mind is going right now, as far as how are you interpreting data, and are we putting you in the best place to interpret data as what you're being asked to do as it relates to KPIs?
Yeah, thanks for the questions. So I'll try to answer them all if I can. So I think, I guess the way I understood or heard your questions, some of it focused externally, some focused internally.
Yes.
As it relates to the community and the oversampling piece. As you're familiar with the ETC survey, as it relates to unmistakable identity, we did engage or invest in oversampling to try to see what the data would reveal about different thoughts and views throughout our community, especially those related to BIPOC community members. Recall having also a conversation with our economic development director about what that might look like from a business standpoint, and do we think there would be value in doing that, or would those dollars be better utilized being allocated in some other areas? So we had that kind of some robust conversations surrounding that. So it's still kind of, we're early on in the process. So again, as I mentioned throughout the presentation, we're trying to get a better handle on data to kind of figure out what the data, how's it informing us, how we're making sense out of it, where do we see the benefit. I think internally as an organization, I spoke a little bit about our affirmative action plan. So in some cases, when it comes to like the employee engagement surveys, again, I know there was a presentation given before about like our post surveys, our city staff surveys, or employee engagement surveys. In some cases, based on like our affirmative action data, we have small size related to racial and gender in some areas, so it's a little bit a slippery slope to kind of reveal what that data may share. So we're still just trying to, I guess, figure some of that out. But I know internally as an organization, there are areas where we see the underutilization, or there's a lower number of people in some departments to where trying to disaggregate the data by race may possibly can cause some harm. So we're kind of proceeding with caution on some of that, I guess. Hopefully that was helpful. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any additional questions?
Thank you.
Seeing any? Okay. Public comment?
Find it pretty interesting that we had this long discussion just now at the instigation of Ms. Sellers there about data. And in this discussion, this was about equity and inclusion. And if I remember right, a couple of weeks ago, a lot of people came in here asking you about some data. And you know, you asked Ms. Sellers about data that's Dr. Muhammad says that can't be disseminated because it might cause harm because of racial inequities and things like this. But the data that was asked for about the equity and inclusion of the homeless people is data that, according to the HMIS system, is supposed to be built to be disseminated to the public. So why is it that we aren't focusing on that data? Data that we should be able to have access to. Is that not equity and inclusion in this city? Because I can tell you that it's not equity and inclusion to tell a rape victim when she asks to be bunked with another person, well, you're not being raped now, are you? That's James Chisholm, your LCS director. That's equity and inclusion according to him. How about your executive director telling them not to tell anybody about their rapist being inside pallet with them? That's your equity and inclusion. We got to include the rapist in there too. How about we get down to some serious discussions about equity and inclusion? Equity. And who's protecting those victims who spoke out now since they've been kicked out of pallet? Was that retaliation? That's not equity. Am I germane enough for you guys tonight? Are you listening? Are you hearing what I'm saying? Dr. Muhammad, they don't like me, but you really should look into these issues because there are some equity and inclusion issues in this town beyond race. Socioeconomic, when police go out to areas that are poorer parts of town, I've seen them. I'm the guy, you all know this, that if there's a citizen out there that's experienced more police interactions, I'd like to know who he is. When they're in the poorer areas of town, they approach it with an apprehensiveness that is unseemly. I've seen them assault camera people who were doing nothing wrong. And I brought in here many times before you guys decided to start shutting people down, the inequities of police abusing our citizens. I brought in blow-up photographs of it that you all chose to ignore. And we just had another nice conversation, another little bullshit session. Are we circle jerking here, or are we going to get some stuff done around this town?
Tristan Rithman, 66046. Homelessness already impacts marginalized identities much more. Our city's failure to properly work towards a solution is a small part of the institutional bias of this country against queer identities, racial minorities, and people experiencing both physical and mental disabilities. Lawrence is supposed to be a progressive gym of the Midwest. We are supposed to be proof that people like me with marginalizing identities don't have to seek out major metropolitan areas to escape bigotry or seek opportunity. It is baked into the history of this town, and a large part of why I love living here. This past week, I've spent cooking, distributing, and learning a little bit more about the issue of the homeless crisis in this city. In the years since the city's commitment to solving the problem, I've observed the lack of emphasis on housing-centric aid, and it stands in stark contrast to the city's own program called A Place for Everyone. Judging by the information presented on their website, they have a much better understanding of how the problem is solved than how you are actually trying to solve it. How many homeless people have we gotten into housing every month? Versus on Band-Aid solutions, which are less necessary, easier to implement, and much, much cheaper the more stable their living situation is. We also have not made much more progress in short-term emergency shelter, hardly moderate progress in transitional and supportive housing, and a severe lack of substantial affordable housing measures. Why aren't the city's efforts aligning more with the program I've aligned, the Place for Everyone program? I want you to try to see it from my perspective. You are planning a sweep that we know, based on the objective facts of the matter and recent history with the closure of the North Lawrence camp, that it will only do substantial harm to the people living there, unless there is a clear path forward. That is what we're asking for. But you have not responded with any path forward for these people. What am I to assume the plan is other than what I see the city doing? What conclusion can I arrive at other than that the city of Lawrence, whether by incompetence or malice, is going to commit an act of violence against the most vulnerable people in our community on the 15th of October? I don't mean to berate or lecture you. I just believe in a better path forward that will improve the lives of not just the unhoused, but the community as a whole. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, Nancy Snow. First of all, I did mention in an email to the entire board, to the entire City Commissioners Board, the incident that Mr. Aravi described to you from Pallet Village. I sometimes email not the entire commission, but several of you. I want to thank the one commissioner who has responded to those emails. I will save my remarks about the unhoused until the public comments section, but I want to call your attention to the strong welcoming neighborhoods slide that Dr. Muhammad presented. It states passage of Ordinance 9960 on source of income discrimination. Expanded housing protections to include source of income, domestic survivor, and immigration status, benefiting marginalized populations. Align with efforts to eliminate barriers and ensure equitable service delivery. In the emails that I have sent to you, I pointed out issues with housing and shelter that affect this community. I've pointed out the inadequacy of services regarding addiction and recovery and mental health services. I really have not received adequate responses. I will say that a couple of years ago, I walked down into Bircham Park, which, as you know, is an encampment for many unhoused people. I saw there a sign that said, "No matter where you're from, we're glad you're here." You probably remember those signs. I appreciated the irony of the individual who posted that sign there. It is clear that many people in Lawrence are not concerned about the unhoused. I would urge you to include them in your strategic plan for equity and inclusivity. Lawrence is said to be progressive. I have not seen that. The City Commission is said to be transparent and democratic and accountable. To be perfectly honest, I haven't seen very much of that either. So I would urge you to work toward the goals to include the unhoused in your strategic plan for equity and inclusivity. One young man who spoke last week has lived here all his life. What is your obligation as elected representatives toward that individual and toward the others in our community?
Hi, this is Chris Flowers, and I fully support the previous people that have spoken. And I'm just curious, the equity and inclusion team, I just wondered what's their opinion on the Supreme Court decision that the conservative justices say it's okay to sweep like homeless camps, while the progressive liberals said it's unconstitutional and unconscionable. So I'm just really curious what our director of equity, or whatever the title is, how he feels about homeless sweeps. I think if you're a director of equity, you'd be against them, since you know the progressive justices were against them. So just something I'm going to throw out there. Thank you.
My name is Dr. Justin Spees. I want to bring your attention to something that was mentioned in a slide in the DEI presentation just now that said fair and impartial delivery of services. And I disagree with this, and I want to give a couple of examples why that's a straight up lie, that there's not fair and equitable delivery of services. The first one has to do with here. A couple months ago in July, I came up here and I spoke during general public comment immediately after two people that had spoke before me that mentioned the Community Police Review Board. One of them was Josh Seiden, who spoke the entire time about it, and the other one was Michael, who spoke right before me, and you guys allowed it. And the second I came up here to speak, I started to call out Ember Sellers for nominating Seiden to that board, and she did a point of order and said I couldn't speak because that had already been spoken about. And I said, well, why did Michael get to speak? And you guys didn't answer. And so that's called discrimination. That is not exclusion. In fact, that is exclusion. You're excluding me from the conversation while allowing other people to have the same conversation. Not very progressive, guys. The second example I want to bring to your attention is I had two incidences at the Lawrence Public Library in May and June of 2023. The first one I attended was the gender ID marker change, and I carried a sign that said, if you're born with a dick, you're not a chick. And I was prevented from attending the meeting because my sign, according to the library, was vulgar and disruptive. And so I wasn't allowed to attend that meeting like the public was because of my viewpoint. So that's called viewpoint discrimination as well, guys. Not very equitable delivery of services on that one. And then the second time there, the following month, I attended Deja Brooks' Reading Rainbow. Bart Littlejohn, you were there as well. And I was prevented from attending that one because I had two signs with me. One sign said, "This is wrong," and the other sign said, Stop grooming kids. And I was prevented from attending that because, according to the library, that caused a disruption. So just think about that. A sign that says, "This is wrong," and "Stop grooming kids" was enough to exclude me as a member of the public from a public library for a public meeting. So again, not very inclusive. I'd like to, maybe you could look into that. That's called viewpoint discrimination. I know that doesn't really, for some reason, rise up to your guys' chart on the DEI stuff, but it's the ultimate exclusion. And it excludes the community from hearing what I have to say and what other people have to say. So by excluding my words, you're excluding them from entering people's ears, and it violates everybody's right to free speech.
Any public comment on Zoom?
Stephen Watts.
Hi, thank you. Equity and inclusion. People not at their desks. People don't come to work. Mr. Muhammad's one of them. He doesn't answer the telephone. He doesn't return phone calls. He doesn't respond to emails. One time, this man phoned me and then promptly hung up because I wasn't willing to kiss his backside the way he wanted to. Equity and inclusion. That includes, or should include, the elderly, of which I am in that group. The elderly suffer from prejudice, discrimination, and deprivation. In addition to, can you imagine being a racial minority and an old person? That's double down bad. But this guy doesn't want to deal with it. He only wants to deal, I don't know with what, black people and transgender and gays. I don't know what else. He brings up the Department of Justice dog and pony show that we were subjected to as a success. I'm going to let you know that that was just a dog and pony show that was controlled by the police and the Ursula Minor family, better known as the NAACP, which requires you to pay $30 to be a member to go in and have a say, and they also don't answer emails. This is all performative to make it look like something is happening, when in reality, very little is happening. Lawrence is sliding backwards from what was once a progressive, all-inclusive community to a place that is becoming for rich people and everybody else. No middle, everybody else. It's just a matter of time. So all of this data-driven bull butter, when were decisions not data-driven? Every decision I've ever made has been based upon the data that I acquire and seek to answer the question. And therein lies the rub, isn't it? You can make data say pretty much whatever you want if you only look in one place or with 180 degrees of perspective. I'd like to see our town include the elderly in equity and inclusion. We don't offer any services for the elderly in this community, and housing for the elderly is becoming increasingly problematic, if not bad. I'm lucky for me, myself, and I, although on the other side of the coin, well, you never know, the market could change. At any rate, please, these PowerPoint presentations are a mile wide and an inch deep, and I'm going to comment on them as they continue to come in. Mile wide, inch deep. I hope you have...
Thank you, sir.
What? I'm sorry?
That's your time, sir. That was 3 minutes. Thank you.
That is all the comments.
Okay. Any? Sure, Mr. Baston.
David Baston. Sorry, I don't have my glasses, but okay, so yeah, the Lawrence is diversified and supposed to have a place for everybody. I see a lot of stuff that I mean, a lot of the programs the doctor there mentioned, he did bring up color, people of color, I mean, Indians, black, what have you. I didn't hear him say anything about the white people, so I don't think I've seen that in the slides either, so maybe that's just, yeah, I don't know. It's not there, so. Then, I mean, if Lawrence is a place for everybody and equity and inclusion, why don't we make an ordinance like we did for 9999 and other for not having abortions here. Unborn children, I think, should have a say. It's murder, I feel. It just is to do that, and we need to work on an ordinance for that. If we're going to do all these other ordinances, we need to do the same for unborn children. So, yeah, I think that's a big deal to take the life of somebody. I mean, could have been myself or whoever, one of you guys. You're not even giving them a chance. So I think that's a big thing on equity and inclusion. Yep, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay. Bringing it back for any additional comments on.
Thank you for putting the report together. Appreciate it. Keeping track of the data. Yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you for doing that work. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Muhammad, and appreciated getting a chance to look at it. So, all right, if there are none else, we'll move us on to our next agenda item G, commission items. Any commission items?
Just going to say real quick, I appreciate the advertising for the parking tickets. There's a great sign that says, "You want to the only good way to rip your ticket in half is to, be part of this program or whatever." And it's a pretty clever sign. So I mean, anyway, I look forward to seeing how that program works and being downtown. I've heard a lot of downtown employees, downtown business owners. Excited about that program, so hopefully it does make a difference. So,
okay. No other commission items. I'll move us on to item H, city manager's report. Craig?
Thank you, Mayor. There are 3 items under the city manager's report. One is just some data, again, that we have compiled, and it just talks about our tax base, and it had relevance in our budget discussions, obviously, and some people were interested, so we updated our current tax base mix, and hopefully that's interesting. Also, the other item is the Economic Development Agency report, so we occasionally just give you updates on how we're doing and the progress of our partner agencies, and that's just an update. It's got some links in there for that data. And then the last item is the future agendas report.
Okay. Any questions for Craig?
No, sir. Nope.
Okay. All right. Public comment on this?
So since we found out that Brandon McGuire's just got the check for the homeless, why don't we have some data in that city manager's report? He's giving you data about the tax base. Why can't we get data from the HMIS system that the city's been bragging about for so long and that city staff have been bragging about? We had some deadlines. I think there was supposed to be a dashboard or something in April and some raw data by July. We missed both those deadlines. It's obvious where the priorities are for the city manager. While I'm on the city manager's report, let's go ahead and hit on this upcoming election of mayor, vice mayor. This whole thing about y'all just doing the round robin thing of 1 term each, it's not working. It's not working because you don't have a fucking year to figure out your job. Because I got to tell you, tonight's about the best performance you've given in a year. Because over a year ago, I put up the video here not too long ago, over a year ago, you just went nuts throwing somebody out of here. You don't have a year to learn your job, Bart. That means that we need a qualified person getting elected to that chair that can actually handle the meeting and can actually run the meeting from day one. And while we're on the topic of the mayor and the vice mayor, why don't we just get a strong mayor and throw his ass out? Get a mayor up there that can actually run the city. If Craig wants to be the mayor, he can put his name on the ballot and see if he can get the votes. My money says no, not after that stunt with the fire department. But really, we don't have time. We don't have a year for the mayor to learn the job, to figure out how to handle the job so that the city doesn't get sued repeatedly. We don't have time for a mayor who's not willing to stand up to a city manager who's going to get the city sued as well for his illegal actions. We need a strong mayor who can stand up against commissioners who are so pansy-ass that they got to go run and hide in the back room from the voters that they've pissed off with their lectures time and time and time again. We need a strong mayor. And unfortunately, we haven't seen a strong mayor in this town in a long time.
I agree with that. I don't like the way you guys elect mayors and vice mayors, because the mayor and vice mayor needs to be qualified. And just doing a round robin, you don't ensure they're qualified. Let me give you an example of that. So just the other day, Amber Sellers released a statement. And in it, she says, each commissioner faces different forms of these assaults, yet the impact is universally harmful. Some of the incidents include intimidation tactics, including threats and bullying that seek to create an atmosphere of fear and hostility. And so I want to address that because that's political propaganda. That's what's called misinformation. So if there were threats that were happening here, Amber, you would have called the police. There would have been a case report generated. There would have been an arrest from us for threatening you. And there also would have been an article in LJ World and Lawrence Times. And we all fucking know that. But none of those things exist. Threats are a crime, so you would have called and reported that. None of those things happen. Not to mention the mountain of evidence of all the videos here. At no point have we ever threatened you, because again, if you did, you would have freaked out, called the police, and we would have been hauled out of here in handcuffs. Never happened. So that's what's called propaganda. It's gaslighting. It's a complete fucking lie. And any moron that follows you and believes it. Yes, Bart, what is it?
Can you keep this germane to...
Oh, it is. So her gaslighting and her propaganda disqualifies her from being qualified to be the mayor. I just want to point that out before you guys go down the road of electing somebody that's unelectable. Furthermore, she says, my fear is that the normalization of such behavior will embolden someone to act on these threats, potentially causing harm to a commissioner or even worse, a city employee. Again, that's gaslighting. No threats of any kind have ever occurred, because if they did, you would have just generated the case report. And it brings up a question, why aren't the reporters asking that? And they're like, oh, Amber Sellers, so threats, crimes have been committed against you? Well, what happened? Well, let me also call the police and get some collaboration on this. But no, they don't do that. They just print it as if it's fact. Oh, threats have happened. Threats have happened. We're not going to follow up on them. We're going to fact check it. Dare I say, is that misinformation? It's a complete fucking lie. Furthermore, you say, Lawrence is a city built on respect, inclusivity, and a shared commitment to progress. We are better than the behaviors we've witnessed in recent months. There have been no behaviors. It's all words, Amber. And this statement is in reference to you getting up and leaving during general public comment. And so that's the opposite of being transparent and inclusive. You're doing the opposite of that. You realize that, right? You say that you are not afraid and that we're the cowards, but you are the definition of a coward by getting up and leaving the room because of some words. Some words.
Sir, let's keep it on, city manager report.
Well, it is. It's about the way you guys conduct your meetings as mayor, and that Amber is not qualified to do that because she just sits in a back room taking a shit while we speak.
Hi, this is Chris Flowers, and I just want to talk about the election of the mayor and vice mayor. I just want to say I hope you all open it up to public comment. Like in the past, it's never been open to public comment, and I think the people should have a say in who they want to be mayor and vice mayor. I mean, I don't see what the harm is in allowing people, before you do the election, you be like, is there any public comment? Then people come up and they point out why someone would make a good mayor. I don't see how that would harm us. I think it would do more good than bad. So I just want to say, open it up to public comment before you do the election of mayor and vice mayor. Thank you.
Sherry, any on Zoom?
Is that all in the room? Stephen Watts?
I thank you. Let's hold my time for a second. What happened when I was talking just a minute ago? Nobody told me the time was up. The mayor just said, sir, and I asked what, and the next thing I know, nothing's happening, and I'm rejected. What happened?
Sir, you might not have heard. I told you right after your time was up. That's why I said that.
Yeah, well, thank you. Don't start my clock yet. I want you to know that they are so effective at getting rid of you in the meeting, and yet they seem to struggle with including you. Okay, you can start the clock now. Okay, the city manager's report. There was nothing in the city manager's report about the financial accountability for the police department. The police department is bypassing the required reporting despite the finance department assuring that they were going to play nice June 1. Where is the city manager with respect to compelling the police department to be part of the town and not separate, not its own place, its own junta? There's been no movement relative to the correction of the town website. You got a $90,000 a year web content administrator. Where is the city manager report with respect to supervising these well-paid staff who can't get the job done? If they can't get the basic job done, they shouldn't be adding new stuff. Am I just old? I'm just talking about that, wasn't I? I don't think so. It has nothing to do with age. It has to do with holding people accountable for what they're doing. Let's talk about financial disclosures for the town commissioners. I asked for this. The time is coming that we need to know, the public needs to know what each of you are worth money-wise and where it comes from, how much you got and where you work. Evidently, everybody's got a job except Ms. Sellers, who's, I guess, selling cookies out of her house. I'd like to know where everybody works and how much money they have. I need that included in the city manager report for analysis in the future for data-driven decision-making. It's a shame that this city manager report cannot actually say something, and the fact that you guys let it come in like this. That's all for now. Thank you.
That's all the comments, Mayor.
Okay. All right. I'll move us on to our next item, commission calendar. Anything on the calendar you want to talk about?
That's good.
I would like to notice on Saturday that we have the ribbon cutting for the Prairie Park,
Okay.
which is the new outdoor classroom.
All right. If that's the case, I'll go ahead and bring us back. Give folks a couple seconds, 10 or 15 seconds to leave the room if you want to before we start open public comment.